Explain the significance of the Hoover Dam. How is this dam built so fast and efficiently? What were some drawbacks of building a dam? And finally, explain what the bonus army was. Are you done, complaining over there?
I'm not complaining. She's already spoken.
Yeah, okay. Bless you. Bless you. All right, so what do we have here? So one, I guess you'd say glimmer of hope for Hoover's administration was the Hoover Dam. Okay, at the time it was called Boulder Dam. So describe that for me. How was it built? How was it built so fast and efficiently? Go ahead, Kale.
They ran pipes through the slab, they ran water through the pipe.
Yeah, good job. Good job. So when they're pouring the concrete, they did it in sections, right? And this was a way to try to cool the concrete fast and in a fast pace of time. And along with that, they ran steel pipes through the concrete pours. So that was running through with cold water to try to cool and harden the concrete in a fast pace. How long did it take to build the dam? How long did it take? Do you remember? About 5 years. Okay, it only took about 5 years. That's it. And it's amazing to think about because these they had to divert the river first, so they had to dig these huge tunnels through the walls of the canyon to divert the water to build the dam itself. And as they're doing that, obviously many people died, and over 100 people died in the creation of the Hoover Dam itself. But what were some benefits of the Hoover Dam? What were some benefits? So right around mid 1930s is when this was finished up. Go ahead, Cassie. Yeah, good job. So as the Great Depression took hold, this provided government funded jobs to people. Okay, so through public works programs. So the government was actually funding these jobs, giving people compensation so that they could live, right? Although it was very dangerous, this still gave hope to people that there's still work out there. All right, good. What else, Chloe? Yeah, good job. So power generation of Southwest United States. At this time, there really wasn't as much economic growth, industrial growth in Southwest United States. South California just wasn't as built up as what we know as today. Okay. And same thing with Vegas, right? Las Vegas just wasn't a thing until Boulder Dam, Hoover Dam came about. So this is generating power to inspire economic growth. All right. So yeah, this was presented in the early 1920s, but this wouldn't really get kicked off until President Hoover took office, and obviously the Depression worsening during this time period in the 1930s. So with the Hoover Dam, this generated power to Southwest United States, inspiring more industrialization, economic growth, and maybe more innovation. All right, good. What else did it inspire? Not only in the industry and economic growth, but where else? With manufacturing. What else did it help benefit in this part of the country? Gail, you know? So we talked about manufacturing industry. What else did it help benefit with? It's created a huge water supply, right? So what do you think that would be beneficial for? Barbara?
Well, they said during this time, agriculture.
Yeah, good job.
It would like flood a lot, so this created a stable water source.
Awesome, good job. Yep, so agricultural growth to the Southwest. So in these, obviously in the desert, in these remote locations, it was very dry and there was very little drinking water. So this reservoir that was created from the dam itself created a lot of water supply for Americans. Right. Also with agriculture. So now we have irrigation. Okay, now we can irrigate some of these crops in the Southwest. And overall, this is benefiting American society, benefiting our economy, giving people more hope and jobs, not only in industry and factories, but also with agricultural growth. All right, any questions on the Hoover Dam? So again, amazing man-made feat. And this was shortly after the building of the Panama Canal, which we talked about not too long ago. All right, so the bonus army. What was the bonus army? Kara, what do you have for the bonus army? World War I. Yep, good job. So World War I veterans. So from 1917, 1918, when the United States was involved, after the war, throughout the 1920s, many of these Americans that came home had a job, right? They had a higher standard of living. Okay, they made a good living. They had a prosperous life through the 1920s. But as soon as the stock market crashed and agriculture was becoming poor in the United States, okay, we'll talk about more of these compiling issues with the Dust Bowl today. Many of these veterans wanted their pay, their compensation that they were promised at the end of World War I. Okay, they said that 1945, these people would get their compensation. But many of these veterans pushed for an early form of this pay. And as the bill was getting struck down, voted no in Congress, what did these men do? What did they do, Eddie? Yeah, they protested, right? They marched in front of the Capitol, built a Hooverville there. And obviously, we know these Hoovervilles are an eyesore, right? They're not very good to look at, especially in a nation's capital. And they were just trying to demand Congress to vote yes for this early compensation. Give these people that risked their lives over in Europe, okay, this early pay. And once Congress said no, this caused more problems, okay, to a point where many people were distrusting the government. So how did Hoover and this administration push these World War One veterans away? What did they utilize on them? Go ahead, Cassidy. Yeah, tear gas. Good job. Tear gas. They actually initiated the military on these people to push them out of Washington D.C. So again, a sad, sad sight. These people risked their all in World War One, and now the government promised them compensation. And because they wanted it a little bit early during the Depression, they were denied. So they're pushed away. President Hoover did not look like a good president at this time at all. So even more problems for Hoover moving into his presidency and using tear gas, burning down the Hooverville, and pushing these people out. It just shows that maybe the government is not too trusted at this time. All right, so the only, I guess you could say, benefit of his presidency was the Hoover Dam. We talked about the Holly Smoot tariff, how it made things worse. We talked about trickle down economics, again, made things worse for the economy, right? Obviously, the Hoover Dam was somewhat of a benefit to American society as his public works program was initiated. But this was kind of carrying over to FDR's presidency. So he didn't really get the benefit of the Hoover Dam himself, but started during his presidency. Then obviously the bonus army. So things aren't looking good at all for Hoover. Right? The Hoovervilles, Hoover flag, Hoover blanket, all blaming and bashing him for the problems of the Depression. Sad stuff. Sad stuff. All right, so things are only going to get worse now for President Hoover, which we're going to talk today about, the Dust Bowl. Your terms for today, you got the Dust Bowl and Okies. All right, so what do you have for the Dust Bowl? Griffin, what do you have?
The Dust Bowl was the name given to the drought-stricken Southern Plains region state suffering severe dust storm.
Yep, good job. So they referred to this time period as the Dirty 30s. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Okay, but the Dust Bowl was a time period which we're going to talk about, caused by many different factors that created more problems for agriculture. I know what you're saying. Okay, well, there's an overproduction, an oversupply of goods and products and really food in the marketplace during the 1930s. So this Dust Bowl might actually help things out, right? This will stop the production. It does for a short bit of time, but we all know that food eventually will become scarce. So with that being said, it spoils after some time, meaning. All right, so with that being said, this even causes more problems to a point in the mid 1930s, late 1930s. There's a food low supply of it, okay, causing prices to jack up even more and causing the economy to even go into even a worse depression because now all these farmers are gone. There's no one to really fill these fields anymore, okay, or really continue with the growth of agriculture. So they were stuck in a very, very tough situation. But now the Dust Bowl brought on a lot of environmental impacts, okay, to a point where these black blizzards would span across the United States and even to the East Coast, New York City. Pretty wild times. So I'll show you some pictures today and explain a little bit more about that. Okies, we already talked about. Gabe, who are Okies?
A resident native cultures. They were like the people who like went out. I know.
They're migrant workers, right? So these are people that lost their home, lost their way of life because of the Dust Bowl, because of these poor times in agriculture, and they're moving west, right? They're looking for more opportunities on the West Coast, maybe in industry, factories, or maybe just becoming a farmhand on a farm. Who knows, right? So these people lost everything. They're kind of moving one place to another. They're wanderers. They're living in these makeshift tents, kind of going place to place, looking for opportunities. So, Noah, you said it, right? With the stick with the thing on the back, these hobos kind of walking around. Unfortunate times. So again, things are only getting worse again for President Hoover. So real quick, just want to talk about the Dust Bowl today. So what caused it, where it's located, and a couple pictures depicting the Dust Bowl. Whoa, there's sound. I forgot to put sound on here. If it loads. Oh, it crashed. All right.
Dang, they're just taking a 15-minute nap.
15-minute nap. I don't think that will happen. I don't think so.
Pretty promising.
You zip it.
Ew,
You. Yeah.
it's your problem.
All right, now we're good. All right, so the Dust Bowl, where'd it happen? Where'd it happen? Well, the Great Plains region, Midwest United States. So, oh, look at that transition. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Wait, where's the sound effect?
I took it off because it was just annoying. It was annoying. Oh, the sound effects. Yeah. But anyway, the Dust Bowl, like I said, happening in the Midwest United States. And when these dust storms really picked up, it actually expanded all the way across to, well, where we live today and New York City, and even way out in the Atlantic Ocean. And these dust storms really impacted the agricultural growth in the United States. And these black blizzards, in some cases, actually blackened out the sun. And it was just an amazing, terrible, obviously, thing that occurred in the United States. Right? This is something that's never been seen before. And many depictions in articles, newspapers, and political cartoons depicted the Dust Bowl and its effects. All right. So there's a lot of hardships that occurred from this environmental impact. So what caused it? One thing was severe drought, no rain. obviously you can't really affect that. You can't really stop that from happening. But without any rain, there's no way for there obviously growth. Okay. And with the constant overplowing of fields and the poor farming techniques that were happening from really since the start of the 1900s in the Great Plains region, right, this just really caused the soil to become very loose. And there's nothing compacting this soil down. Okay. And if you continue to overplow these fields, chances are you're not going to really have any type of obviously agricultural growth. And the topsoil is just going to be loosened to the top, and there's nothing compacting it down. All right, so another issue is overgrazing by cattle. So I know it seems crazy, but the Great Plains region for many, many years really didn't have any type of livestock applied to this area. So once farmers moved out to the frontier, moved out to the west in the late 1800s, moving to 1900s, they brought their livestock with them. And a lot of these cattle obviously roam the Great Plains, and they ripped up the grass that kind of held down the soil. So I know it sounds ridiculous, but introducing a new, let's say, animal, an organism to an environment is really going to have a harsh impact to the environment. Okay, and you guys all know that from Mr. Dietrich, I'm sure, right? Or maybe Miss Wasson, I don't know.
Miss Weaver.
Miss Weaver. I thought grass and soils, Mr. Dietrich. No. Oh, okay. I got you. So overplowing by farmers, like I said, poor farming techniques. From 1917, even before that, Americans were advised to grow as much crops as possible, right? So their goal is to try to create a food supply that would outlast really Germany and the Central Powers during the war. The only way we're going to win this conflict is by our production, okay, by the agricultural growth, to feed our soldiers on the front lines. And for many, many years, government never told them to stop. So just continuing to grow these crops, continue to grow this food. And eventually this is going to have some impacts. Right now today, obviously there's techniques, there's practices of farmers to have a crop rotation, right? So you just can't grow the same crop over and over and over again because it's going to rid the soil of its natural nutrients to grow, right? If you just do that constantly, well, chances are you're going to destroy your chances of growing any crops and having a successful farm. So just with poor farming techniques caused this Dust Bowl too. And many more compiling issues occurring from this time. And here's some pictures, as you can see, of the Dust Bowl. So like I said, these black blizzards would oftentimes darken out the sun and eliminate sunlight for many communities across the Great Plains and moving into the East Coast. And that's just one picture of a black blizzard. Pretty crazy stuff. All right, also high winds. So high winds. So yeah, again, another environmental impact you can't really stop from happening. Obviously, drought, lack of rain, and high winds you can't prevent. But some of these other things like poor farming techniques and just really an overgrazing by cattle causes many issues to obviously pick up during this time. So eventually we'll talk about it under FDR's presidency. He decides to create the USDA. He decides to create agencies to help prevent environmental impacts from happening like this ever again. And we'll talk about the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, and the Agricultural Adjustment Agency, which is actually paying farmers not to grow crops, which we'll mention here soon enough. So again, government needs to take an action during these times. And again, they advise farmers to start growing a lot during 1917 and building up to World War I, America's involvement. But no one ever told them stop. Okay, for a short time, this overproduction was good as prices were low and many people could put food on their table. But after some time with this continuation, it's going to destroy the landscape. It's going to destroy many of these areas that were utilized for economic growth and obviously agricultural growth. All right, so I get it. It's pretty slow. I got to take these transitions out. Hopefully it doesn't break down again. But again, these dust storms were called black blizzards. So if you see that on the test, that's what it is, obviously. But this dirt debris that would fly up in the air, okay, and take over many of these communities, right? It kind of looked like a snowstorm, but in all reality, that's dirt, that's debris. Right? So like I said, occurring in the Great Plains region. So central United States, from really spanning from Texas all the way up to the border of Canada, where this fertile location of the United States was located. All right, so here's some pictures of the Dust Bowl. So this kind of looks just like a snowstorm, but in all reality, that's dirt, that's debris. You can see how it's piled up alongside the house, where it's even, in many cases, covering some of the windows. And people that lived in these locations in the Midwest would often have to board up their windows, board up their doors because the dirt and debris flying through some of these cracks or openings within the house. And you can only imagine living like a life like that. It's almost like the apocalypse in a way, right? So you lose your farm, let's just say, obviously, with the economic hardships. The Great Depression hits, and then all of a sudden now, with these poor environmental impacts, you can't even make a living. You can't even grow food to feed your family. So you can imagine how hard it really was for these people. Here's another picture of a dust storm, a black blizzard. You just see how tall and how large these black blizzards were and how they expanded literally the size of communities. Okay. And like I said, even expanding all across to the East Coast, okay, as these weather formations move. So it was a crazy, terrible time. Here's another picture of a dust storm. Oh, poor kids walking and maybe like a family going to another home or something like that, or maybe checking on things. But as you can see, people that walked around, which they needed to maybe live, obviously to get some food or some sort of source of water, which there was a lack of in the Midwest at this time. Okay, as they're walking around, many people had to put cloths around their face, okay, to try to protect themselves from the dirt and debris flying through the air. And it just looked like they lived in some sort of desert. You guys ever see the movie Mad Max or hear about it? Yeah, Ms. O'Neill, have you seen it before? Yeah. And how they're just searching for water. And that's literally how it was. These people just needed to survive. They needed water. And in the Midwest at this time, because of the Dust Bowl, it was really scarce. So kids even obviously needed some sort of protection. Look at him in the back. Oh my gosh, putting his hands up by his head. Just crazy, terrible times. All right, and we talked about migrant workers already, Okies. You can get there. There you go. So migrant workers, Okies, okay, leaving the Midwest, okay, trying to move west for opportunities, maybe a better way of life, maybe just resources, water, whatever it might be. And these are what these makeshift, I guess you could say, living conditions were for these Okies. They would just kind of pitch tents and move and wander place to place looking for a way of life. Maybe just being a farmhand on someone that might be still, I won't say successful or thriving, but still had some sort of farm establishment, okay, moving out to the West. So these people, these families would move constantly place to place looking for some sort of opportunity. And it just shows and symbolizes the harsh times and the harsh reality of the 1930s. Well, I think my presentation is kind of going to crap here. Let me just get the slide up for you. I'll just talk about it. There we go. All right, so again, you can only imagine these urban areas too. You have Hoovervilles, these people that are living in these makeshift communities, these shanty towns. And then you look out in the rural areas, these people are just kind of flowing place to place, looking for some sort of opportunity. And like I said, with the Dust Bowl, these environmental impacts didn't make anything better at all. And under President Hoover's administration, already you can see how many people distrusted him, how many people just lost their trust in the government, as they just didn't do anything to help these people out. So Hoovervilles and the urban areas where we once talked about the 1920s, these thriving places of modernism, of new secular views. And I know Prohibition hit, but people were going to speakeasies, going to dance clubs, and now all of a sudden living in Hoovervilles. Now you look out the rural areas, obviously the fundamentalists, which we mentioned in the 1920s, okay, their way of life drastically changes too. Many of these people lost their homes, lost their farms, and now are Okies, migrant workers, walking and wandering place to place, looking just to really fill their bellies with food. So again, the 1930s, just a harsh time in American history. You go from the highest of highs in the 1920s to the lowest of lows. All right, is there any questions about Okies, the Dust Bowl? So remember the causes to the Dust Bowl. So overgrazing by cattle. What else do we have? Poor farming techniques. What else? Severe drought. Good. And high winds. Good. Good. And these black blizzards just taking hold, looking like snowstorms, but it's actually dirt and debris flying through the air. right, well, that's all I got.